Everyone knows NBA YoungBoy. Most people would agree he's the best rapper in the game right now, especially with how consistently he drops music. It's like he wakes up every other week and just decides to shift the culture. But there's something most people are sleeping on. This man has a deep, almost obsessive connection to one of the greatest entertainers of all time, the king of pop, Michael Jackson. We aren't just talking about a bit of inspiration or a random coincidence. I'm talking about YB wearing the iconic gloves and living the same reclusive, mysterious, and industry-hated lifestyle that MJ did. He even reached back to 1987, pulled from Michael's legendary catalog, and flipped one of his most iconic tracks into a record that now has over 31 million views. The wild part? When people ask YB to his face if he's the Michael Jackson of this generation, he just says, "I don't know anything about no Michael Jackson." He claims the comparison goes too far, but by the end of this video, I'm going to show you that whether he admits it or not, the similarities are so specific and undeniable that it stopped being a coincidence a long time ago. Before we dive into the details, we have to set the foundation. You can't appreciate why this connection matters without understanding the sheer scale of these two artists. Michael Jackson needs no introduction. He's the greatest entertainer to ever live. Period. Thriller is still the best-selling album of all time. His fan base was so devoted that during his legal battles in the early 2000s, people were camping outside courthouses and throwing themselves at his car. People would literally faint just being in the same building as him. He couldn't go anywhere without being mobbed, and a public appearance was always a massive national event. Because of that level of fame, Michael eventually retreated. He isolated himself, pulling away from the industry, the media, and the public eye. People called him weird and eccentric, claiming something was wrong with him because they couldn't understand that kind of pressure. Sound familiar? Now let's look at young boy Kentrell Gaulden from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. By the age of 21, this man topped the Billboard 200 while sitting inside a jail cell. Think about that, from jail. He has 16 top 10 albums and over 13 billion views on YouTube. That's 13 billion. His fan base is so loyal that during a virtual court hearing in 2024, fans flooded the Zoom link and chanted "Free YB" so loudly they disrupted the entire legal proceeding. They literally crashed a federal court case for him. That is the level of devotion he commands. And just like MJ, YoungBoy is often labeled as weird, reclusive, or mysterious. The industry doesn't fully embrace him. He's been blackballed, overlooked, and told he doesn't fit the standard mold. Are you starting to see the pattern? And we haven't even reached the heavy hitters yet. Let's start with the most direct and undeniable piece of evidence: the music. In 2019, NBA YoungBoy dropped a track called Dirty Diana. If you know your MJ history, the second those opening notes hit, your jaw probably dropped. YoungBoy reached back to Michael Jackson's 1987 album Bad, one of the greatest records ever produced, and flipped Dirty Diana into his own song. To put this into context so you can truly appreciate it, Bad featured 5 #1 singles on a single album, and Dirty Diana was one of them. It was a rock-infused, emotionally raw and electric track about a woman obsessed with Michael, essentially a groupie, and the grip she had on him. It was dark, personal, and controversial for its time, eventually hitting #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. That isn't some obscure deep cut or a forgotten B-side. YoungBoy went straight for one of the crown jewels in Michael Jackson's catalog to build his own narrative. In Dirty Diana, YB raps about an ex-girlfriend named Diana. He talks about the love he had, the way she left him, and the genuine pain he felt. He took MJ's story of a woman who won't let go and transformed it into his own version of heartbreak. Even the music video is intense. In it, Ayana breaks into YB's mansion, smashes the windshield of his sports car, and stabs the tires. The video even shows YoungBoy catching her sneaking through his backyard in a ski mask. The whole thing carries a cinematic, dramatic energy that feels exactly like a Michael Jackson production. That record has pulled in 31 million views. 31 million for a song that mainstream media barely even acknowledged. That is the power of YoungBoy's fanbase showing up for a track built on a Michael Jackson foundation. What really gets me is that YoungBoy was only 20 years old when he made that song. At 20, the record he chose to build on was a 1987 MJ classic. Not something from his own era or even the 2000s, but a song released years before he was even born. That isn't an accident. That's a deep-rooted connection. Now, let's talk about something people are seriously sleeping on. While most YB fans know the song, not everyone has caught on to the fashion parallels. And this is where it gets interesting. In July 2025, YoungBoy was spotted out in public wearing fingerless leather gloves, specifically Harley-Davidson Loyalist gloves. Now you might think, it's just a pair of gloves. But this is YoungBoy. Every fashion choice he makes is analyzed under a microscope by his fans. When those photos dropped, the internet lost its mind because the immediate association was Michael Jackson. MJ's single glove is arguably the most iconic fashion statement in entertainment history. It started in the early 80s and became as synonymous with his identity as the moonwalk itself. When you see a single glove anywhere in pop culture, you automatically think of Michael Jackson. So, here is YoungBoy in 2025. rocking the gloves. Is it a direct tribute? Is he doing it consciously? Given how private and mysterious YB is, we may never truly know. But that's actually the point. The mystery is part of the draw. YoungBoy doesn't explain himself or post statements clarifying his intent. He just moves, and the world watches as the pieces come together. And the person he keeps being compared to is Michael Jackson. Are we really surprised that nobody else is talking about this yet? Now, we're getting to the part of the video that I believe is the most important and the most profound. The gloves are cool and the song is legendary, but this next point is what truly connects NBA YoungBoy and Michael Jackson on a level that goes far beyond music and fashion. The mystery, the isolation, and the way both men exist completely outside of the industry that made them famous is what truly links them. Let's look at Michael Jackson. A lot of younger fans might not fully grasp just how massive he was. During the Thriller, Bad and Dangerous eras, MJ was the most famous human being on Earth. Not just in music, but on the entire planet. The industry loved him as long as the money was rolling in. But the moment he started pushing back, talking about owning his masters and calling out labels like Sony for exploitation, the narrative shifted. The media turned, the industry distanced itself, and the same people who once praised him started calling him crazy. MJ responded by retreating to Neverland, surrounding himself with a tiny circle and letting his music do the talking. Now look at YoungBoy. He has 16 top 10 albums and over 13 billion YouTube views. He recently wrapped a national arena tour that grossed over $70 million and sold 550,000 tickets. Despite those numbers, you don't hear him on the radio. He isn't winning Grammys and he isn't invited to the industry parties or award shows. He even accused his own label, Atlantic Records, of underpaying him and withholding his masters, famously saying he felt like a pawn. Just like MJ, he pulled away. In 2022, he moved to Utah, not LA, New York, or Atlanta, but Utah. He's surrounded by mountains and snow, miles away from the industry. In a rare, complex interview, he sat in a ski resort suite and gave a simple piece of advice regarding the music business. Just stay away from it. YoungBoy moving to Utah carries that same energy, just in a different zip code. Even his engineer, one of the few people in his inner circle, describes him as one of the most reclusive and mysterious artists on the planet. He explained that YoungBoy's primary form of communication is his music, not interviews, social media posts, or press runs. That is textbook Michael Jackson behavior. MJ used Thriller and Bad to speak to the world. He used his performances and videos to say everything he couldn't express in an interview. YoungBoy, who drops music at a relentless pace, is doing the exact same thing. Every album, mixtape, and loose track he releases is a message to his fans that the rest of the world doesn't quite hear. What if I told you that the most famous recluse in music history and the most prolific rapper of this generation are operating from the same playbook? The evidence points right to it. But it gets even deeper when you look at the fan bases. The way YB's fans move, the way they defend him, show up for him, and treat his movement almost like a religion is the closest thing to MJ's fan base that hip-hop has ever seen. That's no exaggeration. Michael Jackson's fans were legendary for their devotion. They didn't just listen to the music. They organized, campaigned, and fought back against every negative story or accusation aimed at him. When he passed in 2009, the global grief was unprecedented. People who had never met him felt like they had lost a member of their own family. Now, look at YoungBoy's fan base. They have stood by him through legal battles, industry beefs, and constant negative press. When he was on house arrest for 4 years, they kept his name alive. When the mainstream tried to move past him, they took over comment sections, YouTube channels, and podcasts. Essentially any platform that tried to count him out. And as I mentioned, when fans found the link to his federal court Zoom hearing and started chanting "Free YB," that showed a level of MJ tier devotion. The willingness to show up for an artist in the most chaotic and unconventional ways is something both of these men have inspired unlike almost anyone else. I think the reason both fan bases are this way is because both MJ and YoungBoy have always been fundamentally misunderstood. They have always felt as though the world sees a version of them that isn't real. Michael Jackson felt the media portrayed him as a freak when all he wanted was to create music and be loved. Similarly, YoungBoy feels the industry treats him like a pawn, never fully acknowledging his success and blackballing him for simply being himself. Their fans feel that energy, they internalize it and take it personally, fighting back on behalf of their artist because they feel no one else will. That shared experience of being misunderstood giants is the thread connecting Michael Jackson's legacy to YoungBoy's present. It's actually wild when you see it laid out like that. Now, let's bring it back to that complex cover story. What happened when they directly brought up Michael Jackson's name is one of the most fascinating moments I've ever seen in a YB interview. The interviewer brings up the comparison, mentioning that people are calling him the Michael Jackson of this generation. YoungBoy, who is usually stoic and gives nothing away in interviews, actually engages with the idea. He doesn't shut it down immediately. He reflects on it. Then he says, "You got to think about my age, bro. Did y'all catch that?" He didn't say the comparison was ridiculous or that they were in different lanes. By saying "think about my age," It suggests that in his mind the comparison has merit, but he feels he's too young for that conversation yet. He's essentially saying he isn't finished and hasn't done everything he's going to do. He wants people to revisit the conversation when his career is all said and done. When the interviewer reminds him of their similarities, YoungBoy deflects, saying, "I don't know anything about no Michael Jackson." But right after that, they bring up Dirty Ayanna, the MJ sample, and he doesn't deny it. He doesn't claim it was just a beat he happened to like. He acknowledges it. He says he doesn't understand that level of stardom or the power MJ had. But honestly, that humility makes the comparison even more accurate. Michael Jackson never viewed himself as the biggest thing on earth either. He was deeply private and insecure. When he looked in the mirror, he didn't see a superstar. He saw a misunderstood kid from Gary, Indiana, who just wanted to perform. And here is YoungBoy, a kid from Baton Rouge who broke his neck as a child, became a father at 16, and rose from rapping on his front porch to selling out arenas, claiming he doesn't understand his own power. That is one of the most MJ-like things he has ever said, and he likely doesn't even realize it. Let's look at the industry side one more time, because I don't think people give this enough weight. Michael Jackson's war with Sony in the early 2000s is one of the most dramatic and well-documented stories in music history. MJ stood outside Sony offices, called the head of the company a devil, and organized protests. He went on television and claimed the industry was conspiring against black artists, accusing them of theft and exploitation. In response, the mainstream media, the same media that had praised him for decades, turned around and called him unstable, paranoid, and claimed something was wrong with him. Now, look at YoungBoy. He accused Atlantic Records of underpaying him and withholding ownership of his music despite the hundreds of millions he generated for them. He said he felt like a pawn. He's spoken about seeing demonic forces in the entertainment industry and wanting no part of it. He describes the business as something to stay away from, something that corrupts and discards young artists. Just like with MJ, the mainstream response to YoungBoy's perspective was to dismiss him. They called him difficult and treated his absence from industry events as evidence that he was off his rocker. But the numbers tell a different story. YB's massive tour grossed $70 million and sold over 550,000 tickets. He achieved that while living in Utah, doing almost no press, and refusing to kiss the ring of label executives, radio directors, or award show committees. He built an empire completely outside the traditional industry structure, fueled by a fan base that is incredibly devoted and music that feels real to them. In his final years, Michael Jackson was building toward a comeback on his own terms. The This Is It concerts were meant to be his way of telling the industry, "I don't need you. I have my fans and my music." YoungBoy is living that exact reality right now, in real time, and he is winning. No cap. That is honestly one of the most incredible parallels I've ever had to discuss. Both men were essentially blackballed by the very machine that built them, yet both refused to back down. Both let their work speak for itself, and both came out on top regardless. Now, I want to talk about something that goes even deeper than the music, the fashion, or the industry politics. I want to talk about the actual human experience that connects these two artists. At the core of what makes Michael Jackson's music resonate decades later, and at the heart of why YoungBoy's music hits harder than anything else in rap right now, is pain. Real, documented, undeniable pain transformed into art. Michael Jackson grew up in one of the most intense and controlling environments imaginable. His father, Joe Jackson, pushed his children relentlessly and was often critical and demanding. Michael, the most sensitive and emotionally intelligent among them, absorbed all of that pressure. He grew up feeling like he never had a true childhood and felt isolated even in a room full of people. He once mentioned in an interview that he would cry watching families at the park because he had never experienced that kind of normalcy. Every bit of that pain surfaced in his music, from the vulnerability of human nature to the raw rage and scream and the deep longing in childhood. Now let's look at Kentrell Golden. YoungBoy broke his neck as a young child. He grew up without his father, and his grandfather, one of his most influential figures, passed away while he was still young. He became a father himself at just 16 and spent his youth in and out of juvenile facilities. While other kids his age were worried about homework, he was on the streets of Baton Rouge. He has lost friends to violence, spent years incarcerated, and lived under house arrest for 4 years. At just 25 years old, he has had to fight the federal government in court. Just like MJ, all of that trauma is poured into his music. That's why tracks like Lonely Child or Outside Today hit differently. When YoungBoy raps about pain, love, and loss, his fans don't just hear the songs. They feel them in their chest. They know it's real because it comes from a place of genuine struggle. He has taken experiences most people couldn't imagine and turned every single bit of it into sound. These are two artists from completely different eras and genres, yet they share the same soul-deep connection to their craft. But they share the same emotional core, the same raw vulnerability hidden beneath a public image that most people mistake for hardness, weirdness, or being difficult. Are you seeing this? Honestly, it's surprising that more people aren't talking about it. And let's not forget, Young Thug said it first. one of the most respected creative minds in hip-hop, went on record calling NBA YoungBoy the Michael Jackson of this generation. When that clip went viral, people didn't just laugh it off. They debated it seriously. That shows how strong the comparison is. Even when it comes from another elite artist, it isn't dismissed. It's discussed. Then you have regular people all over the internet making the same case. You see it in the comments under his videos, on Twitter threads, and in TikToks breaking down these parallels. When YB ran through the streets of New Orleans and fans swarmed him like a deity, reaching for him and losing their minds just to be near him, someone posted the footage with the title, "NBA YoungBoy runs through the streets and fans treat him like Michael Jackson." Everyone who saw it understood the reference immediately because that is exactly what it looked like. There is something happening with YoungBoy that transcends a normal fan-artist relationship. It looks more like worship than fandom. The only modern comparison that even comes close to that level of devotion, emotional connection, and the "he belongs to us" mentality is Michael Jackson. I'm not even exaggerating, this rabbit hole goes incredibly deep. To bring it all together and give you the full picture, NBA YoungBoy, whether he admits it or not, is living a life that runs parallel to Michael Jackson's in ways that are too specific to ignore. He flipped one of the most iconic records of MJ's career, Dirty Diana from the Bad album, and turned it into Dirty Ayana, a track with 31 million views that sounds like nothing else in his discography. He's been seen wearing gloves, an accessory that is inseparable from Michael Jackson's identity in music culture. He remains one of the most reclusive, mysterious, and deliberately isolated artists in the game, choosing to communicate through his music rather than his words. He has retreated to Utah, surrounded himself with a tight circle, and kept the industry at arm's length while still dominating it from the outside. He has openly accused his label of exploitation and mistreatment, speaking out against the dark side of the entertainment industry. Despite generating numbers that most artists could only dream of, he has been blackballed and dismissed by the mainstream. His music is rooted in deep, documented pain, a childhood that stripped things away from him before he could even process the loss, and he turned that trauma into a sound that connects with millions across generations and genres. His fan base is fiercely devoted, organized, and emotional, willing to interrupt federal court proceedings just for him. It is truly the closest thing to the Michael Jackson phenomenon that we've seen in the modern era. The comparison of being the Michael Jackson of this generation is something even YB has had to address. When asked about it face-to-face, he didn't exactly shut it down. He simply said, "You got to think about my age, bro." Even when the interviewer pointed out they were the same age, YB deflected, saying he didn't know anything about Michael Jackson. But when Dirty Ayana was brought up, a literal sample of Dirty Diana, he didn't deny the connection. He just admitted he doesn't understand that level of stardom or the sheer power MJ held. He claimed the comparison goes too far. However, the evidence tells a different story. The gloves, the songs, the isolation, the war with the industry, the shared pain, the fan base, and the mystery all point to a pattern. Michael Jackson didn't name himself the king of pop. The fans and his legacy earned him that title. Similarly, the facts are placing YoungBoy in a similar position, whether he's ready to accept it or not. The wildest part is that Michael Jackson, despite his global dominance and record-breaking career, never seemed to fully believe in his own greatness. He was always chasing something, always feeling like he had to prove himself, and always feeling like the world never truly saw the real him. In that sense, the parallel isn't just about the fame, it's about the man behind it, that insecurity, that vulnerability, and that constant drive to push the boundaries of what was possible are exactly what defined Michael Jackson. And there is YoungBoy in that complex interview, sitting in Utah and speaking in a whisper as he watches the smoke rise, not even thinking about the charts, the awards, or the industry politics. He just makes music. He stays away from the noise, trusts his fans and his art, and refuses to let the machine define him. In reality, that is the most Michael Jackson thing he could possibly do. Alright, gang, that's the full breakdown of NBA YoungBoy's deep and undeniable connection to Michael Jackson. We've covered everything from Dirty Ayana and the gloves to the isolation and the industry wars. From the raw pain in his music to a fan base that would literally storm a federal Zoom call for him. Whether YB realizes it or not, or whether he'd ever admit it, he is walking in Michael Jackson's footsteps in a way that no other artist right now even comes close to. If this blew your mind, and I know it did, you already know what to do. Drop a comment right now and tell me, do you think YoungBoy is the Michael Jackson of this generation? I want to read every single response. Subscribe if you haven't already, because we are just getting started with content like this. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.